So it's fall in the low country, and we're going to talk today about what a lot of people are doing this time of year to get ready for what's happening next year, including their short-term rental properties and how to make sure they have a stellar year ahead. Let's get after it. All right, Chris, so it's fall in the low country, right? It's an amazing time of year, right? Finally. It was a hot summer. And we want to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening in the market and also maybe that particular segment that's so important to our local marketplace, which is tourism. And what feeds into tourism are all these short-term rental properties. We've got so many clients for all this time that have bought and sold properties, and the mechanics of the finances, not just the finances of what's happening with short-term rentals and what that whole industry looks like right now, but also what's happening this time of year. What are people doing to prepare their property, not only for what just happened, which was another robust rental year, but also preparing for what's happening next year? And I think that just to kick things off, where the market is right now, you and I talk a lot about this, what we call pixelization. And pixelization is the idea that during a hot market, go back to COVID, everything was the same red hot color around the entire country. Those color tones start to change as the market starts to change. And what we all understand is that there's different areas of the nation that do better than others. So some areas are still hot, others are cooling off. There's some areas in the state of South Carolina that are doing better than others. And frankly, there's some areas in the local market that are doing a little bit better than others, right, for a variety of reasons. And the good news is that, we continue to see positive trending year over year about what's happening. In fact, if you look at the data through September of this year, pretty much 2% increases in terms of the number of new listings coming on the market, the number of pending sales that are taking place in the market, and the number of closed sales that have happened in September compared to September last year. So generally speaking, things are positive, but it's a fluid market, isn't it? And one of the things that you're kind of paying attention to and watching is as inventory grows, we're actually seeing some segments of the market locally in that pixelization, some segments of the market that are seeing more of a balanced market than we've seen in the last handful of years. Let's talk about that.
Well, the markets are all different. It depends on what you're tracking. And sometimes when we put out the stats for the month, we're talking about basically all of the southern Beaufort County.
Correct. Yeah.
When we start dialing into these micro markets, the sub markets, we're seeing different things happening. We are seeing some indication of inventory trending starting to go up in some areas.
Yeah.
We're seeing some indication of prices stabilization. Okay,
right.
Balanced supply and demand are more in check in some areas. So we're watching that closely. We're also tuned into what's happening nationally, what's happening with inventory levels nationally. And so we've got to pay close attention to that because that's really indicating where we're going and how to best be positioned for that and what to expect so we're not surprised by anything.
Yeah, for sure. And the reality is that more inventory, low inventory has been sort of the lament of the market and also the beauty of the market for the last 3 years or so, meaning most buyers right now that are active in the market still wish there was more inventory.
Of course.
They still wish there were more choices. They still wish that they had more to choose from, and they're waiting for that to happen right now. And yet, meanwhile, in some other segments of the market, let's say maybe even some of the villa complexes where there's an increased sensitivity about maybe the financial picture there. Interest rates are high, taxes are going up, insurance assessments are occurring, et cetera. You're starting to see some sellers feel the pressure of added inventory when there isn't as much consumption happening.
Yes, and buyers are paying attention to that too. Buyers the first thing. If there's a high demand target area and there's only one property for sale and it just hit the market, they're flooding to it. They're looking at it. But if all of a sudden they're seeing, okay, here's a little market segment and there's a half a dozen villas to choose from and they've been on the market for 60, 80, 90 days, the urgency is taken away.
Right. Well, the reality is they got choices.
Yeah.
And choices are great, right, by the way, on the buyer side. And so let's kind of turn that a little bit. We talk about this being the fall time of year, right? I think we can sort of officially say that we've come out of rental season. You look back during COVID when the rental season really expanded, and all of a sudden I remember the Island Packet article talked about that being I think it was October of 2020 was the best rental month of October that we'd ever seen.
100%.
It was like everybody was on the island, and so we know that popularity has continued. But some of what happened this year is interesting, and we've been talking to some of the local experts in that arena. A couple things that they pointed to, and I think that we sort of experientially noticed as well, is that cruise travel was up some 70% this year worldwide, and international travel from the U.S. was up some 30%. That's all pulled away from our rental base. Yeah. And you basically have people that said, we've been doing our drive-in vacation, which has been amazing, but we got to get out of town. We got to get out of the country. We got to get off the land and go do So we're hearing that pulled away a little bit statistically in terms of what was happening on the island. So a little bit of a softer year over year for rentals this year. I think that the occupancy rates were maybe down about 6%. It looks like rental rates, and we want to talk about dynamic pricing, but rental rates shifted in that down 8 to 10%. So all of a sudden, maybe some of the numbers that people were hoping for, or counting on, looking for in their short-term rental property, maybe weren't quite as robust as what they were hoping for this year.
Chip, what was the recapture rate looking forward into like 2024?
Cruises were up, the international was up. So the reality is that people are looking at that and saying, okay, those are big, expensive vacations, right? I mean, there's obviously that component logistically. It can't continue. I mean, it's not going to continue. So the recapture rate is that the local experts are looking at is at least 25% of that gets recaptured next year. And it's probably going to be more. People are going to get back in their cars. They're going to do that drive-in travel. So we think about what's happening there. And we've heard a lot about dynamic pricing too, right? So that's kind of cool to me. You think about the airline industry, it seemed like they were really spearheading that, which was years and years ago, these super smart people are like, how do we fill seats more? And they start changing the pricing. So any given time, you go on to delta.com, it's like that seat price changes from one moment to another, one day to another. That's happened in the short-term rental industry, hadn't it too?
Yeah, that's really been interesting to learn more about, which we're learning more about the dynamic pricing, but that can happen with rentals. I mean, people, if you've got a rental manager or whatnot that's tracking that stuff and can adjust prices accordingly based on supply and demand and internet traffic and all of that sort of thing to capture people that are online viewing right now, that's huge. You can do that in a rental market. You can't really do that on listing homes. Right. You can't change the price that much. That'll confuse the market. But someone logs in and looks at a rental site and it's X, and then they don't book, and then they look at it again and it's changed, it's not going to confuse it. They're going to react if they're ready to go.
And one of the things that we learned about too was that the future booking timeline is changing too. Yes. So advanced booking basically changes. It used to be something like 6 months in advance people would book. Now it's 30, 45 days. So all the more important that dynamic pricing happen so that you're capturing people right in that moment, right? Because people are being a little bit slower to that commitment as well. Let's talk about for property owners. This time of year, that basically the occupancy is way down. Thank goodness for them, because it gives them a chance to do what? Like, what are the smart owners doing right now and for the next couple months to get ready for next rental season?
Well, I think now more than ever, looking into the next rental season, things like your online presence, your photo, your presentation, all of that's going to be really, really important, because there are going to be some options out there. So making sure that's in check. I mean, this is the time now to evaluate your performance, looking back and projecting, looking ahead. Talk to your rental manager. What are they projecting? What are some things you can do? Projects right now, this is the time to hit any project, because once the rental season starts, a lot of villa complexes in some areas even shut down what can be done maybe on the outside or something like that.
I mean, you can't even do it. You can't do a project during the main rental season.
No, so that's really important, any kind of projects. But here's the other thing that I've been thinking about quite a bit, and as we interact with folks that do have rental properties, a lot of folks that have rental properties, especially rental properties that do a lot of business, they rarely get down to see their property. They rarely inspect it for themselves. They rarely go in and smell it. They rarely go in and see how the kitchen is equipped. What does the furniture look like? How's the lighting? Is there anything that they would do personally or want to do to present the property the best? This is the time to do it. Either you do it or send somebody over to do it, but just make sure you inspect that property and see how things are going before the rental season kicks in.
100%. Get it primed up, and then get your new photo set done. All this stuff. So maybe you're updating the decor. Maybe you're upgrading the technology. Maybe you're making sure that the pots and pans hadn't walked away and that they're all in good condition. All that kind of stuff. Touching everything is super important because it is a very competitive arena out there.
Very competitive.
And that brings me to one last point, is that what we've seen is, and I think you had a story with a client that bought an oceanfront home, and they've got a great rental manager that's working on dynamic pricing and all the marketing that they need to do. But they're also kind of involved in the background a little bit about ways that they can kind of press for that.
They're leaning in. Like everybody has to right now. I mean, when the markets get like that, you've got to do everything you can do to maximize your potential. So one of the things that you can do, even if you've got an awesome rental manager taking care of everything, I mean, if all of a sudden you're not booked for the next couple weeks out, social media is an easy way to connect with a broad friend base and just say, hey, just so you know, our house, our villa, or whatnot is available next week. We might even do a discount on price. Let us know and we can get you set up. So that involvement kind of in concert with your rental manager, I mean, they would love it too. I mean, the more the merrier, right?
Everything helps affect the bottom line. In fact, there's some people that this time of year, we all know it. We see there's a lot of fundraisers that are happening for nonprofits. People donate a week of like an off-season week to their local favorite nonprofit, and then they are able to auction that off and make some money, and then they can talk to their CPA and say, well, this is a donated week. So there's all sorts of ways to do it. And I think that's a lot about what's happening right now this time. So everybody's even though the rental season is a little quieter, there's all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes that's getting ready for the next time we come in.
That's right. A lot to do before the season kicks in.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for your time as always, and we'll talk to you soon.